I converted to Islam in 1967. I took Shahada in 1967.
And was there a particular group that you started with?
Well, ironically, I took Shahada at the hands of the first man that was the Imam of what became Darul Islam movement. His name was Rajab Mahmood. He gave me my Shahada in 1967 in New York.
Was he the one who convinced you to take your shahada?
No. Islam came into my family, my bloodline, my family, in 1952, I believe it was. I had an older brother who's 10 years my senior. And when he was like, I guess 17, 18, had to be something like that, because I was 9. At 9 years old, he had me delivering a newspaper in the neighborhood in West Philadelphia called the Pittsburgh Courier, because in it there was a one-column article called Muhammad Speaks. And what the Muslims at the time were doing, they were using that newspaper to just show that, hey, there's something other than Christianity in the world. You know what I mean? So they was using that black newspaper to show that, and I was a newsboy. So Islam, I was around Islam from 9 years old. You know, I used to, because my brother was a Muslim, he was a Muslim at the time, and I used to play with the Nation of Islam by saying Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam, you know, and just throwing it out there like that, Kuli Balu, Kuth Balik, and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? But as a little boy, you know what I mean? Uh, my life took another kind of change when I was about 15, and I became a minister of the faith of the gospel. And my father was a minister of the gospel, and I kind of followed in his footsteps, whatever the case may be. And then I did that for a couple of years, and after high school, an incident occurred in high school where I left high school. I was in the 12th grade, an all A student, and an incident occurred that caused me to leave high school. So now I'm not a jitterbug. I'm not one of them guys. And I was already in the Naval Reserve. So I went on active duty. I went on active duty at 17 years old in the United States Navy. I stayed on active duty for 2 years, stationed in France, but gave me the opportunity to be in North Africa and Turkey and Spain. And with the little bit of the fact that I knew my brother was a Muslim, I was able to like relate to, the decorum of the Muslims the Muslims that were in Spain. And I met a young boy about my age or so. We were in Spain, and this young boy was doodling something on a napkin. We were in a bar. He was doodling. And I decided to take this napkin home with me and keep it as keepsake. After I became Muslim, I got out of service in 65. My brother was living in New York, so I was going back and forth to his house in New York, seeing him. And this is how I became Muslim, because all his friends were Muslims. This is where I met Yahya Abdul-Karim and Brother Bashir and Brother Saeed and even Khalid Yassin. I met all them brothers in New York because they were friends of my brother. You know what I mean? But by 1967, he had convinced me, more or less, hey man, you need to be a Muslim. So I said, okay, you know what I mean? So Rajab Mahmood gave me my Shahada in New York. And when my wife and I got married and we was moving up here, and I happened to take that little thing that brother wrote on in the napkin, and on the napkin he had written Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim in Arabic. So I had that with me from the time I was in the military. I had the background of the newspaper when I was a little kid. So it wasn't no big thing by Allah's mercy, for me to come into the religion of Islam. And that's how I became Muslim.
So you would say your brother was the biggest influence?
Oh, the biggest only because of the fact that, like I said, he's my blood brother. And I remember my blood brother. He's dead now, but Allah be pleased with him. But he used to, I guess he must have been about what, 15, 16, like that. But anyway, he used to tie a towel on his head. And he used to put what's it called? What was that stuff called my father had? Began with an M. What mascara? It was mascara, yeah. My father used to use a black mascara on his mustache. So my brother would tie a towel on his head, paint a black mustache on his lip, paint a goatee on his chin, and have everybody in the neighborhood doing this. Your Royal Hiney, your Royal Hiney, which come to find out, Salat, you understand what I'm saying? Growing the beard, you know what I mean? Turban, you know what I mean? And he was the only one that was like that. In other words, he didn't get it from somebody else. You know what I mean? So I remember him doing that, you know what I mean, as a kid. You know what I mean? Then when he became a Muslim, he must have became a Muslim. I think he said he took Shahada. I think he said he took Shahada and I think he was in prison when he took Shahada. But when he came out, I remember him in the street, and I remember the argument that he had with my father concerning the Quran, you know, and my father more or less put him out. You know, he's older than me, 10 years older than me. But by the time I got like, I guess about 15, 16, like that, you know what I mean? Hey, that's my older brother, and I was cool hanging out with him, you understand what I mean? You know, matter of fact, it was through him that I met Malcolm X, you know, right up here on 61st and Locust, where he was living at the time, you know what I mean? You know, but yes, he was the biggest influence of me becoming Muslim, even in my name, because when you become Muslim at that time, it's not so much in vogue now, but when we became Muslim, we changed our names. And I changed my name to Saeed because his name was Suleiman. And his last name was El Hadi. So I became Saeed El Hadi, you know.
Okay. So when you mentioned Malcolm X, did you meet him before or after you became Muslim?
Before I became Muslim, that was, he was at my brother's crib up on 61st and Locust. And there was a bunch of them around. You know, I don't know. You know, I think Jeremiah X might have been one of them because while my brother wasn't really a part of the Nation of Islam, he really wasn't a part of the Nation of Islam, but he knew them. You know what I mean? Because they came from gangs and stuff, and he came from street, and he knew them all. Especially when they had the mosque down there in North Philadelphia at 12th and Barely. They had a mosque down in North Philadelphia, and he was. We had family down there in North Philadelphia where he hung out. You know what I mean? So he knew him, but he never did, as far as I know, he never became a member of the Nation of Islam. You know what I mean?
Okay. So who did your brother come to Islam? Do you know who he came under Islam under? Was there any particular?
Well, yeah. At that time, the the persuasion of Islam was either or, the Ahmadiyya or the Nation. He came under the persuasion of the Ahmadiyya. The problem at the time, it wasn't the problem, but the thing at the time was the Ahmadiyya were proselytizing. You know what I mean? And the people that returned from the campaign in Europe that got introduced to it, you know, here in Philadelphia specifically, you know, because I don't know about other places, they became Ahmadiyya Muslims. You know, the jazz musicians that were in town, they gravitated to Ahmadiyya Islam as opposed to the Nation of Islam. You know, matter of fact, one of the jazz musicians, his name was his name was Lynn Hope. He became Muslim, and he was the first African American to make Hajj from Philly. You know what I mean? This is like late 50s. You know what I mean? But my brother was a part of that persuasion. You know what I mean? For a long time, too. For a long time. The reason I say a long time, because that was in the 50s. And when he first went to New York in 61, when he first went to New York, he was still a part of the Ahmadiyya persuasion until he ran into the brothers at State Street Mosque who weren't Ahmadiyya. You know what I mean? They were really Sunni Muslims, you know, and he got down with them, and then he became one of the founding fathers of Dar Islam. You know what I mean? You know.
So your brother became one of the founding fathers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He along with Rajab Mahmoud and Yahya Abdul Kareem and brother Ishaq and a couple of brothers that I met through the years. I met them through the years, who were the first nucleus of what became Dar Islam, because it didn't become Dar Islam until like about 68. He started like 1962. You know what I mean? Imam Yahya said that Dar Islam began when there was a brother that gave a raid. Prophet made raids. He raided a gas station, but he got busted. And he gave his address, because he was a Sufi, he gave his address as the mosque. So when they went to his address to investigate, the farm brothers that were at the mosque, who were Pakistani for the most part, said, nah, Muslims don't do such things. So they more or less said, we ain't gonna give up, we ain't gonna back him, you know what I mean, more or less, right? So the African Americans that were there said, whoa, you ain't gonna you gonna give up a brother? You know how the mindset be, and this is the '60s, man. Later for y'all. So what they did was they left State Street and they went and got an apartment by themselves, African Americans, and they began, praying, and that was like 1962, and then they had another situation in 1964. They moved, and they moved again in 1965, and they moved again in 1967, and they kept on moving around until 1968. 1968, the FBI raided the mosque, and you may have heard this. You heard this? You know, yeah, the FBI raided the mosque,
Yeah.
and they said they was looking for a jab dodger. You know what I mean? And they raided the mosque on a Juma, shoes on and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So the brother said, "Oh man, we better do something about this." So they wound up electing Imam Yahya Abdul Kareem as the Imam, and they put a head on this idea. The idea was to have a united body of Muslims with one head. So they went around to surrounding states, telling the brothers, hey, they're raiding us, they're going to raid you too,
Yeah.
basically, you know what I mean? But wasn't a whole lot of mosque of African Americans, Orthodox, around. First Dar Islam mosque that we opened up in this city was in 1969. It was about 10 of us, 15 of us, something like that, if that many, that opened the mosque in 1969.
As I'm listening, I'm learning how much you are a link to many things. Like even the fact that you as a family, your brother, we didn't know even that your brother was one of the founding fathers of the Dar.
Oh.
We didn't know that. Like, you know what I'm saying? We don't.
Well,
know that.
I told you earlier before we started the interview,
Mm-hmm.
this book
Yeah.
was put out in 1994,
Yes.
and in it there's a treatise of it's about the Muslim communities in North America.
Yes.
So it has in there the Nation of Islam, the Moorish Science Temple, Sufism in America. It has all that in it, but it also has an article on the Dar Islam movement,
Yeah.
which at the time of inception to its end was the largest Orthodox African American Muslim movement in the country.
Right.
You know what I mean? Second only to the Christianity, because everybody knew that in Islam, everybody knew the nation wouldn't do the squat bop and do about stop.
Right.
You understand me? Even though they had the most calling, and the idea became if you're black, you got to be a part of the nation, and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But Dar Islam movement was really the African American Islamic movement in this country.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is you see my perspective, I think that what made us so dynamic, and matter of fact, Imam Yahya said it too, maybe that's why, was the fact that instead of being anti-America, we were pro-Islam. So the deal was the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet. And we didn't have push-button Islam. We didn't have call to shake. We didn't have that. We had something called the translation of the Holy Quran by Yusuf Ali or one by Muhammad Ali. And we had something called the Manual of Hadith by a brother named Muhammad Ali. Class, done deal. That was Quran and Hadith. It wasn't until like about 75, 76. No, wait a minute. Maybe a little earlier. It might have been about 72, 73 that we found ourselves visiting. There was a conference for Muslims, the Muslim Social Scientists Conference, and it was in Chicago. And Darul Islam was invited. You know what I mean? So myself and the Imam from here and a couple other brothers from New York, and I think a brother from Cleveland may have gone, we all went to this conference, right? And there at this conference, there was a mosque we visited. And the people in the mosque showed us, took us downstairs and showed us that they had Sahih Bukhari hadiths in volumes packed up in the corner. But they wasn't going to release them because they was waiting on the translation of the 9th volume. So we didn't have no hadiths, even though we had hadiths.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the element kept them from us. So I think that the only thing that really kept us going as a movement, as an organization, was, look, the Book of Allah, Sunnah of the Prophet. Can't go wrong. Even to the point that we started having educational classes amongst us, right? And everybody got the same information. Everybody got the same information. And it was handwritten information in your own handwriting. So the only difference was where your own head was at. Even down to the classes that we had, everybody had the same classes. One such class we called the Mubadi class. One of the Imams had gone over to Hajj, and he came back with this little pamphlet. You know what I mean? And it was called Mubadi Islam. Translation was the Three Fundamentals. So we have it that one book. So we used that book, and everybody had to handwrite, copy that book, right? I mean, the information in that book, right? So years later, this is like I said, early 70s. Years later, my daughter came in and said, "Look what I got." So she showed me this book. So I said, "Oh, it's nice." So I opened it up, and I looked at it, and I said, "Oh, Three Fundamental Principles, Sheikh Muhammad Al-Amin." And then I looked, and I was looking through it like I'm doing now, and I dug the Arabic. And I said, "Wait a minute." So then I flipped to start reading what it was. I went upstairs, and I got this here. I said, "Look here, baby.
Okay.
Look at this." And I showed her this, my notes, the same book. I said, I raised you on this book, and I raised you on it. And the irony is, one time I was going into the prisons as a
Show the book one more time.
oh yeah, it's called the Three Fundamental Principles.
And then show the
Yeah,
the one that you had.
this is called my Dewan that says all the classes that we had in it. You know what I mean? And in it's about 8 classes in here. And in it is Mubadi Islam. I think it's the second one.
So did you this is a book you made?
But what I did was we had to handwrite our notes. So I handwrote them. Like but then when Dar Islam ended, that's the computer.
Actually, you know what? You can keep on. That's fine. It's not going to interfere that much.
Yeah, because that's the computer.
Okay.
And that gives the whole of down. Is your pocketbook down here? If that's your pocketbook, in another couple of minutes, the Adon is going to go off on her telephone.
Okay.
And it's going to go off on mine too. Where's my phone at?
That's all right.
Sometimes the Adon goes off like at the same time on all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Other times it'd be like 2 minutes off on each one.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. But anyway, I was saying that what I did was we had to handwrite the notes. So at the end of Dar Islam, when Sheikh Jilani came along, we'll get there too. At the end of Dar Islam, I had all of my notes. So what I did was for myself, I typed them up because it was handwritten. So I typed them up and I put them in something that I call at the Wine on Sheikh Sayed Abdul-Hadi because this has all of my notes, but then at the same time, this has all of my poetry. And at the same time, this has a treatise that I did, a paper that I did on a short history in Islam, 1940 to the present, which was 2000, with emphasis on the Dar Islam. So I got it all under the title of At Diwan Sayyid Abdul-Hadi. You know what I mean? You know, and I typed it all myself, did it all myself. You know like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But my daughter said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, baby, I raised you on this stuff." Hey, listen, I was in the jail. I was a outside minister in the jail, right? You know, so I was giving the Talim one day, right? So the brother said, you know, we wanted to find something that anybody could use. So we used this book, right? So I told the brother, I said, you know what, man? I got this stuff in the early 70s. And the only difference is a word. Well, you ain't got the right thing. I said, what? So this says, you have to know, may Allah have mercy on you, that you should understand these three principles. One, right? My note said, you have to understand, may Allah have mercy upon you, that you understand these 4 points.
Okay. Yeah.
So for a word difference, I didn't have the right thing. Right. You understand what I mean? These guys, hey, listen, and I know I'm recording, I might go off script a little bit, but you said my perspective.
Yes.
So anyway, one time I was in the jail, and the guy said, brother, I need to know what you are upon. So I said, what? He said, I need to know what you are upon. I said, well, man, listen, I believe there's no God but Allah, Muhammad is messenger, you know? He said, no, brother, everybody say that. What are you upon? So I said, well, please am I with Allah as my Lord, and Muhammad is my prophet, and Islam is my religion. He says, no, brother, you have to tell me what you are upon. So I said, well, I'm standing on concrete. What you upon? You know? I said, I'm standing on concrete. So what you upon? Because we be standing in the jail. Yeah. You know what I mean? And what am I upon? I'm standing on concrete. Right. What you upon? Wow. You know what I'm saying?
Did he finally
you know what I mean?
stop?
Oh, and listen, until he got out the jail, every time he saw me, Salam alaikum Sheikh, Salam alaikum Sheikh, Salam alaikum Sheikh.
Yeah. What year was it? What was this?
That was recently. That was like 2011, right. 2012, like that, when I was in the jail.
So you were one of the early ones that like, listen, I'm not gonna let you take me there.
Oh man, well see, one of the things too that I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for is the fact that when I did come into Islam, and I mentioned it, our thing was the book and the Sunnah, and we didn't have, number one, Arabs wasn't proselytizing. So what? No Arab coming over here telling us nothing about Islam. The Arab coming over here, the Rauf, the Abdul Rauf that was coming here was changing his name to Ralph. And the Mikhail was changing his name to Michael. You understand what I mean? You know, so wasn't no Arabs doing nothing for us. You understand what I mean? So fortunately, by Allah's permission, we did have brothers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed to go and study. Some brothers went to Yemen. Some brothers went to Pakistan. Some brothers went to Africa. You know what I mean? Luke Mine went over there to Sistan and stayed all his senior life, all his teenage life. You understand what I mean? So we did get authenticity. You understand what I mean, to some degree. But still, I really do believe that it was this that helped us. Yeah. I think it was this that helped us. Well, of course, this, but I think this helped us so much because, you know, the Prophet said this, done deal. Allah said this, done deal. You know what I mean? Why, right now, you know, somebody going to see this. I know somebody going to see this. Right now, why I don't vote is because the Quran says, "Do not obey those whose hearts we have caused to lose remembrance of us." So, with that kind of thing in mind, now if Warith D. Muhammad ran for president, I might vote for him.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? You know what I mean? If what's his name, Tahir Wyatt ran for president, I might vote for him. But I ain't voting for no Kufa to tell me what to do, and I'm a Muslim. You understand what I mean? And then they'll make it so that you have to do it.
I want to go back a little bit to the concept of the Ahmadiyya, the relationship between the
Oh yeah, yeah.
and the black and the African American Muslims,
Uh,
and the influence that they had.
well, the influence was because of the fact that I think the Ahmadiyya were proselytizing. They didn't have no problem on telling people about Islam and particularly using the promised Messiah. You understand what I'm saying? So the consciousness, and I'm saying this now at 75 years old, but the consciousness was probably African Americans. You got to have a leader. You got to have a rescuer. All the way back from the Nat Turners and the D-Mark VCs and the Garveys and the Malcolm X's. You got to have a spokesperson leader. You know what I mean? So the idea of Ghulam Ahmed being the promised Messiah, you know what I mean, next to Allah appeared in the person of Fra Muhammad was a better thing. The concept of leader with the African American, you know what I mean, and the promised Messiah next to Elijah Muhammad made a difference. In other words, well, I'd rather be a real Muslim than be with the Nation of Islam, because the Nation of Islam is talking about a law appearing in the person of Fra Muhammad. In fact, that's why I said this persuasion of the Muslims that my brother was first affiliated with were Ahmadiyyas. And they had a mosque out here in West Philly on 53rd or 54th and Gerard. You know what I mean? And just about all of them changed their name and took the last name of Ahmed. You understand what I mean? Like a lot of these the people that follow Sheikh Jilani, they took the name Muhammad. Most of them changed their last name to Muhammad. You understand what I'm saying? But I think that was the reason why, because next to the Nation of Islam, the Ahmadiyyas were the only ones that were proselytizing. You know what I mean? And the only reason they used the paper was because the article of Muhammad Speaks at least spoke to Islam for black people. You know what I mean? And it was a black newspaper. You know what I mean? So they used that as as a way of getting some money and as a way of dawah. In fact, here in Philadelphia, the Ahmadiyya just built a mosque from the ground up. It's a lovely, pretty building. Pretty building. It's on 26th and Glenwood, I think. But it's a very pretty building. They built it from the ground up. They got it took them a while. It took them a while to do it. Do you understand what I mean? But the stance of the Orthodox Muslim is, we know that they're still talking that Ghulam Ahmed stuff. Even though, you know what I mean, they salam and all of that, but don't support them. Don't support them, because it's not. It's like the guy that built the milestone at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and they wanted to go there, and Allah said, no, don't go to that joint. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you know.
And they just built one around the corner from where I live, also in Baltimore too. They actually have a lot of political. I was just talking to somebody about
Yeah.
political. They're into the politics a lot.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's very interesting. So, what made what made the group of people like your brother break off from them?
I think that came with knowing some people from overseas. Like for instance, when the brothers was at State Street,
Mm-hmm.
there was a Hafif there. You know what I mean? An Orthodox Sunni Muslim Hafif. You know what I mean? And he taught Quran. And he taught recitation and things to do with the Quran.
Yeah.
So people like that, and there was a brother named Mahad. He in Philadelphia, from the Muslim Student Association. You know what I mean? That would talk about um, would talk about the religion of Islam, not the nation of Islam,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we had at the same time we had going on in the country. We had the Tabligh Jamaat that was coming around. You know what I mean? The Tabligh Jamaat was responsible for a lot of the orthodoxy because when they came through sitting on the floor, eating with your hands. You understand what I mean? Wearing the vidda, wearing the skirt and all that. You know what I mean? So that was a good indication for those of us that wanted to be Orthodox, real Muslims, you know what I mean, inshallah. And that was one of the things I think that pulled them away from the actual Ahmadiyya thing, even though they still flourish because one of my sister-in-law was a big-time secretary for them until she died.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I knew a brother that was the imam of the Ahmadiyya Mosque here, until he got shipped out to, I think he went to Washington. They sent him to Washington. But the mainstream just simply said, nah, I don't think we're going to go that route. You know what I mean? So.
So all right. So now we're back. So now we're at the point where all right, the Dar is actually named, right? So
Yeah.
how does that happen?
Well, the Dar actually got named, and you'll find it real good in this book.
Mm-hmm.
But the Dar actually got named because what they wanted an area
Mm-hmm.
that they could control as Muslims. What is that?
Yeah, what is
That's Dar Islam.
that? Mm.
That's Dar Islam, an abode of peace,
Mm.
an area of Islam. You know what I mean? And that's the title that they took for movement. Now, prior to movement, they had a mosque, and the mosque was named Yasin. You know what I mean? Yasin Mosque. What's Yasin? The heart.
Mm.
You understand what I mean? So we're going to function outside of State Street. We're going to function with what we got and try to establish a Dar Islam. And this tells you, this gives you a nice indication of how many changes they went through between 62 and 69. You know what I mean? They went through a lot of changes. They went through a lot of personnel changes. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, a lot of the brothers got strung out on drugs. Unfortunately, some of them had misconceptions of the deen. Because remember, we folk.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? We folk, and it wasn't a what do you call it? An intellectual movement.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Ikna and Isna and yeah, what like that. You know what I mean? Because these guys is showing enough intellectuals.
So we literally just did like a whole special on Shakedown.
Yeah, Shakedown.
And they talked a little bit about when the Dar, one of the reasons why, and one of the secondhand knowledge accounts of one of the reasons why some of the brothers who led in the Dar split from the State Street Masjid. They said that it was a little bit more. They wanted a little more action. They wanted to be a little bit more.
It wouldn't have been involved.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even from a standpoint of more, not Pan Africanist, but to coach to
Right,
to be
right.
more about African,
Exactly,
about
exactly.
American thing.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about like that that motivation?
Well, that was New York, but I understood it, and I understood it then. Because my brother,
Yeah.
when my brother left here, that's where he went.
Mm-hmm.
He went up to New York and landed in State Street Mosque.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, one of the things that Yahya Abdul-Karim talked about when he talked about the history, talked about the fact that at State Street, they were like automatons, basically. You know, they had nothing to say, you understand what I mean? And they didn't know nothing. And it had to be their way. And in fact, one of the things that Sheikh Dawood came up was, okay, so now you got to have an ID card. You got to have an ID card that say you Muslim that we give you. You understand what I mean? They said, oh, what the heck is that? You understand what I mean? So along with that and the fact that they don't want to back, of course the brother was wrong. But they didn't want to back the brother because Muslims don't do such things and all that kind of stuff. And I say, man, we don't need to do this. But State Street was the only mosque that was Orthodox that you could go to. You know what I mean? So when the brothers left, they left like, okay, well, I tell you what, we'll have Juma in somebody's house, somebody's apartment, do. You know what? We got to have an imam, do. So they finally messed around. And when they first left State Street, they went to Manhattan. They left Brooklyn and went to Manhattan when they first left State Street. Then when they came back over to Brooklyn, then that's when they went through all kinds of changes. You know, they went to Sumter Street. They went to Livonia Avenue, I think it was. At one time, like I said, the mosque was above a Latin nightclub. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
You saying Allahu Akbar.
Wow. Okay. So, all right. And so, when they left, where were you?
Well, I wasn't involved
You wasn't
only because
there.
of the fact that that was like early late '60s,
Okay.
and I didn't become involved with Dar Islam itself until after it became Dar Islam. See, it didn't become Dar Islam until 1960. Well, when they came to Philadelphia, in 1969 because I think the police raided the mosque in 1968. And they decided, we need to tell everybody else. So it became movement instead of Yasin Mosque. It became Dar Islam movement. You know.
And that was when they split from the Pakistanis who was ready to give up
Oh, that was
the
before.
brothers.
They
Oh, that
split that. They split that. They left there in the 60s,
was
62 is when they left
62.
for
Okay.
that. You know what I
Okay.
mean? They left
Okay.
there in 62. And then they went through changes themselves between 62 and 68. Rajab Mahmoud was the Imam one time. And he, like I said, he was the Imam before it became Dar Islam. And he gave me my Shahada. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
because I was going back and forth visiting my brother. And when I became Muslim, when I finally took my Shahada, my brother says, you know what, man? I'm still go back and forth to his house. I took my Shahada in February. You know what I mean? So he was telling me, listen, man, there's some Muslims in Philadelphia. Here's my address book. Go find them. So I said, oh, that'll work. And there was a mosque right around the corner from me. But the thing at that time, the brothers at the mosque, they would go and they would come down Lancaster Avenue with their hats on and suits on and whatever. Then they would go in the mosque and take off their hats and put on the kufi and put on the dashiki. And then they would come out of the mosque, take off the dashiki, take off the kufi, put the hat on, and come on out the mosque. And the mosque looked like a house.
Yeah.
There was no indication, you know what I mean? So and I said, how that? And my brother gave me the address. He said, 4637 Lancaster Avenue. I said, man, I live right in the back of that joint. You know what I mean? So, but that was the way that I started with Dar Islam because, like I said, going back and forth to my brother's house in New York before I became Muslim and meeting his friends who were Muslim, you know what I mean? And the incident that occurred to me with myself in my life, I stopped preaching and all of that. And my mother said I was possessed by the devil because, I stopped preaching. She said, Lord Jesus, you'll stop preaching. Lord Jesus, Satan got you and all of that kind of stuff, right? So My brother said, nah. He said, nah, man. And he said, all you need to do, bruh, is to become a Muslim. Submit to Allah. So I said, what, like you? Only thing I know about Muslim is you.
Right.
He said, yeah, like me, man, like me. So I said, I trust you. You my big brother. I don't think you got me wrong. I'm down. You know what I mean? So I was going back and forth to New York, getting my lessons, you know what I mean, until finally he said, take my address book, man, and go find the Muslims in Philly, man. You know what I mean? And that's what I did. And I became a part of the community in Philadelphia in 1968, the very next year that I became Muslim, 1968. I met a brother. Uh, a brother walked up on me. A brother walked up on me. I was standing on the street corner doing something I had to business doing. And a brother walked up on me. He said, Salaam alaikum. So I said, Wa alaikum salam. So he said, oh, you know what, man? You look just like my brother. I said, I look like a brother. He said, yeah, man, you look like Brother Suleiman Al-Hadi. I said, man, that's my brother.
Stop.
He walked up on me and said, Suleiman Al-Hadi's your brother? I said, yeah. But because I was doing something I didn't business doing, I couldn't tell him.
Right.
So he said, oh, man, come on, man, go with me where I'm going. And he walked me around from, I guess that must have been about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, the dog near midnight, walking me around West Philadelphia, introducing me to Muslims.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And this is Suleiman's brother, you know what I mean? Suleiman's brother. Oh, it's not like, you know what I mean? So I met the brother. The first time I had an Eid feast here, I had an Eid feast here in the house. And then when I first moved up there, and I said, okay, all the Muslims can come. It might have been 200 people, if that many. We had no, seriously. We had an Eid prayer. 1960. The first Eid prayer I went to was November of 1967, and it was at a 34th and Spruce at the Houston Hall on the campus of University of Pennsylvania. And if it was 200 Muslims in there, it was 2,000. I'm just saying, and it was packed with Muslims, but a lot of them were the Muslim Student Association of the United States and Canada. So there was Jordanians and Pakistanis and Arabs, and then a few African Americans. You know what I mean? So it was a small community.
Okay. So, getting back to that time where I guess there was the break with Sheikh Dawood. How did Dar end up choosing the imam that they took? That you took?
Well, Imam Yahya said that what happened was, that's what he said. He said that they signed a treaty, and the treaty said, bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is his messenger. A bayat. And being a follower of the last prophet and messenger of Allah, I hereby confirm this truth. I pledge myself to the Sharia and to those who are joined by this pledge. I pledge myself by pledging my love, energy, wealth, life, and abilities. I also pledge myself to the Majlis Imamate, whose duty it is to establish, develop, and defend according to the precepts of the Sharia. Amin. Imam Yahya said, many of the brothers broke that pledge. How they broke that pledge? You heard what it said. My love, my energy, my wealth, and my life. So some of them approach it by saying, shh, this stuff is too hard. I'm down. I ain't down no more. Some of us said, I ain't got no money. I got to make money for me. However they did it, you know what I mean? Yahya said the reason was that they broke the pledge. And when they broke the pledge, then the few that remained together said, listen, we got to have an imam. You understand what I mean? It's got because you can't have no body without an imam. You understand what I mean? Without a head. You know what I mean? And Yahya was he was the mayor of propagation, but he was also one of the older ones. You know what I mean? One of the older older brothers in the community. You know what I mean? So they elected him as the Imam of Yasin Mosque, which became Dar Islam movement.
Okay, so now that's there and that's solidified. What made because a lot of movements was there a connection and did the people of the Dar Islam movement, did you communicate with the people of the Nation of Islam and other groups, and how did you all work?
The only thing next to Dar Islam was the Nation of Islam,
Yeah.
and we knew that that wasn't correct. But because of I don't know if it's politics. I'm gonna call it politics or not. But Rabitat, which is an organization in Saudi Arabia, which I think was the beginning of what is now called the Salafi movement. I think it because it's same people. But anyway, they came and said, "Listen, we'll sponsor you, Dar es Salaam, to be in opposition to the Nation of Islam if you come under our umbrella."
Oh my God.
You see? And Imam Yahya said, nah, because of the fact that part of the reason of us being Dar Islam like that is because we started out with we need something for us. We ain't anti nobody, but we black, you know what I mean? And we need something for us, and especially for our families. You know what I mean? We need to have our families know about righteousness and being good and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think we're going to do that. So the Imam of the movement decided not to, go under the umbrella of what at that time was called Rabitat. Insofar as the Nation of Islam was concerned, we definitely did a no-no on that simply because Allah did not appear in the person of nobody. So and because we were pro-Islam, we definitely wasn't getting down with that. However, when Malcolm X came back, you know what I mean? The idea was, oh wow, solid. Malcolm X can, you know what I mean, be a good influence for us. But Malcolm started his own thing.
Yeah.
He didn't come over to Dar Islam movement. He started the Mosques of Islamic Brotherhood or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
The Mosques of Islamic Brotherhood, something like that. You know what I mean? So that didn't work out
Oh,
with
writing
us.
notes, so you can. I'm just writing notes.
And then there was this play. These people called I think they were called the Federation of Islam, but they were a predecessor to what became. I don't know about that. I ain't gonna say that because that might not be true. But I think that they were the ones, the Federation of Islam, were the ones that started what became known as the Muslim Student Association of the United States and Canada, which became ICNA or ISNA. Which one is it? It's either the Islamic Circle of North America or the Islamic Society of North America. I'm not on which one it is. It was the Muslim Student Association of the United States and Canada, but that was around at the time of Dar es Salaam. But that was primarily for students in the United States that were Muslims. You know what I mean? We had our own Muslim Student Association, Dar es Salaam Muslim Student Association, for those of us that went to colleges. You know what I mean? And then there was an organization called the Islamic Party.
Yeah.
They made headlines. You heard of the Islamic Party? They made headlines about 76, 77. I think when the boy went down there, they went down there and killed him in the mosque or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they too, they didn't become a part of Dar es Salaam, but they were movements that the Dar es Salaam was actively working with at the time. You know what I mean? So.
So how what it's one of the things that's interesting about the Dart is that as you all branched out into making things like schools and printing presses. I noticed that when it's the State Street Mosque and it was before the Dar, there wasn't that type of organization. What was the difference between when people were under say Sheikh Dawood and it was just kind of more of just a masjid organization? When the Dar, it seems like when the Dar formed, you started to see branches, you started to see it expand.
Because Dar Islam took in consideration the people.
Mm-hmm.
It took the first place it started with the families. That's the first place it started. It started with listen, we bringing our families together, so we start intermarrying. Then we started teaching our children. You know, we building schools. Then we had to deal with economics. You understand what I mean? So we started Shahada Akbar, which was a national magazine. We started Bin Banu. Bin Banu. He did all the artwork. You mentioned that. You mentioned this is a pictorial history of Dar Islam. You know what I mean? And in this, it shows the different things that they did, the schooling. You know, his the sisters conference and the school. You know what I mean, and all of that. Because Dar Islam was what's that word? I think I'm using the word right. Dar Islam was holistic. In other words, it wasn't just praying 5 times a day. You know what I mean? It was like trying to establish Islam in the land. That's what it was about. It was about trying to help and aid in establishing Islam in the land. That's what it was, you know. So we had our own military, you know what I mean? You may have heard of ROD. ROD was the paramilitary arm. ROD was the police force, so to speak. You know what I mean? Seriously, I mean, you wasn't doing what you supposed to do. You had to get busted. They send ROD on you in a minute. You understand what I mean? Take it to the masjid. You mean the Cardi say, "Oh, what do that do?" Okay, take him downstairs and lock him up. You know. Yeah, but we were serious about it because, like I said, I think our thing was more to do with Quran and Hadith and establishing Islam than anything else, as opposed to like politics and the other stuff that was politics and the militancy. We had our militancy too, but our militancy was for Islam. Our militancy wasn't for the pro-black. Matter of fact, here in Philadelphia, a whole lot of Nah, a few. Black Panthers, they had a spot not too far from the mosque. You know what I mean? And once we got to rapping and do that and they said, oh, okay, solid. I'd rather be Muslim. So they became Muslim. Alhamdulillah, you know.
Okay. Yeah. So and that was one of the things that I also when we were talking about the Sheikh, we were doing a history on the Sheikh Dawood. It was that one of the reasons why the leadership of the Dar branched out was also to get away from some of the black nationalism to try to go more into pure Quran and Sunnah. Can you talk a little bit about like the motivation with that?
Well, I think that part of it, I don't know because I wasn't up in the New York Jamaat,
Yeah.
but I think that part of that was that Yahya had a Yahya had a teacher that was a Sufi.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And then when did that start? When they became Dar, was he his teacher at that point?
Uh, his teacher had died somewhere in the interim
Mm.
in Dar es Salaam. Somewhere in the interim he died. I'm not sure. But what Yahya did, he decided to carry on the teachings of his teacher, his Sufi teacher. But he didn't do it to everybody. What he did was we had, like I said, we had a series of classes, and if one passed what was called the Marifa Law class, if one passed that, then on recommendation of Yahya and your teacher, you could get your name submitted to the Sufi the Qadiri order of Sufis. You know what I mean? It was set up to last after 5 years of your classes, and you pass successfully, then Yahya would submit your name, and you would be a part of the Sufi order of the Qadiri or Sufis. But that wasn't for the movement. That was for individuals within the movement. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Okay. One of the things that okay, so did that influence? So you're saying that Yahya kind of had a Sufi inclination, but he kept it more personal.
More or less,
Okay.
not personal, but he didn't say everybody in the movement got to follow me like that.
Mm.
It wasn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, he followed he followed the Shafi'i Madhab,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't say everybody in the movement got to be Shafi'i Madhab. He didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What he said was Allah is the God and Muhammad is the prophet, and that is sufficient. You understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
As long as we got that, as long as we got those two straight, we all right. Now, of course, we're gonna have to deal with the fiqh. We're gonna have to deal with the Sufism. We're gonna have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
All that's included in submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as long as you got the foundation of the two,
Mm-hmm.
that'll be sufficient, and that's the way that Dar Islam rolled, which is why I think one of the subsequent reasons why it got destroyed, I think.
Yeah, and then we're going to move to that. So now you're in a place where you're tell me the height of Dark now. Like tell me when it was at its. Tell me some of the things that made it
Well,
like
at is
what year and
at
what was going on to make it like at
I
its
think
height.
1971 was the catalyst.
Okay.
1971, we had a meeting, and from that meeting came what we're going to do national wise, because we're all over the country. So we said, okay, we got to have a way of speaking. So we came up with the national magazine Jihad Akbar. We got to have some kind of economic thing jumping off. So one of the brothers had some kind of machinery. What was he doing? He was doing artwork or something with his machinery. Any rate, what he did was he lent his talent out and scattered it throughout the community so we have an economic base. All of this came at the meeting in '71, going into the prisons.
Mm-hmm.
We were All of that was fine and dandy. Did nothing upset the apple cart until 1974.
Mm-hmm.
Was the first apple cart that I know that upset the apple cart. The first time the wheel got broken.
Okay.
You understand? It was 1974,
Mm-hmm.
and that was because the Imam of the time he'd wanted to start a business or something,
Mm-hmm.
but the question became whether or not the people he wanted to start the business with
Mm-hmm.
were a part of Dar Islam, where they connected with the movement. And his response that I don't care. Didn't my mosque kind of a vibe? You understand what I mean? And
Yeah.
I mean it wasn't that raunchy,
Yeah.
but basically,
Yeah.
and he wound up saying, "This is the mosque and it's not Dar Islam." So some of us said, "Well, we Dar Islam. See you later." You know what I mean?
Really. Mm.
And we left. You know what I mean? And started another mosque called Dar Islam. You know what I mean? So that's what that was.
Really. So is this connected to the sheikh that came?
Yeah, it's connected to
Oh,
the
it's connected
shake.
to well.
The way the way it's connected to the shake that came was by 1978, 79. By 1978, 79, Dar Islam was premier Islam in America for African Americans. For real, for real.
Mm.
But we were also a threat to the non-Muslim. Here because he in Philadelphia, and we did it all over. But we had a paramilitary that scared the likings out of the people because we trained in paramilitary uniforms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Imam Jamil said he didn't dig it until later on that you standing up against a brick fence, a red brick fence in a paramilitary uniform, black and green. He ain't in no camouflage. But at any rate, yeah, man, because we was doing things like I said, the schooling, for instance. The schooling was such that they said that we couldn't teach our own children, that we wasn't qualified to teach our own children. So we had people that went to school. One of the girls became the principal of a school, you know what I mean? And she quit as a Muslim. She came with Darul Islam and started a school with Darul Islam. You understand what I mean? And we had, that was like about 75, something like that, 75, 76. You know what I mean? Because Bashir was big enough to go to that school, right? When Sister Miriam was around.
So you were saying at this point, obviously you had roles to the point where you had military, you got schools,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
had branches. Talk about just to your knowledge, how far had you spread? How many states were you? And just talk about like some of the things that.
Well, I tell you, when Dar es Salaam broke up, I believe it was. Wait a minute, it might be here. I believe it was over 30 communities, including places like Trinidad, Virgin Islands, California, that's not the right one. It was about 30 communities, at least 30 communities that had branched out under one imam from 1971 to 1981. Matter of fact, somebody said that seemed to be the length of time of communities. 10 years. Seemed like that. But anyway, yeah.
Who was bigger than that point? Was it the nation or you all? Because that sounds like more.
Well, the nation was a little bigger than us.
Okay.
The nation was a little bigger than us. But that's why I said, insofar as Orthodox African American community is concerned, we were number one. We were number one. Because we were bigger than the Federation. We were bigger than the Islamic Party. The Ahmadiyya didn't start no real movement, you know what I mean? And most of the foreign people hadn't built masjids. Then they started building masjids until the 80s. You understand what I mean? Till the 80s. Then you find yourself a Jordanian mosque, Pakistani mosque, and all that kind of stuff, you know.
What did they do before? They went to your masjid? Like,
Well, a lot of them were students, and they had students they had a Juma on campus. So a lot of times the teachers, the Muslim teachers, Muslim students, professional people would go to campuses. You know what I mean? Temple had a prayer. University of Pennsylvania had a prayer. I don't know if Drexel had one or not. I think Brother Nola might have had one. And there was a place. It was bought by some Muslim. It used to be Northwestern University out in the suburbs of Philly. You know what I mean? But yeah, they didn't really start building their own until like in the 80s. In the 80s, you know, because I think that Dar es Salaam stood in the way of people that didn't want to see Islam flourish. I'll put it like that.
yeah.
They don't want to see Islam flourish. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
And
So
and
how did after, because obviously Dar es Salaam did not take the deal with
well,
Saudi Arabia.
they
How
did a
did
couple
that?
of things. They did a couple of things.
Okay.
One of the things that they did was they said that the leaders of the movement weren't educated. Yeah, we wasn't educated. So okay, solid, no problem. We all went to college. Would that satisfy you? You understand what I mean? Then they said, well, you know what? For whatever reason, we seem to have an influx of a lot of women coming to the masjid. Okay, we became polygamists. You know what I mean? He did a couple of things, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And I remember one incident in particular. Man. The police had the Ansar Law movement was another organization.
Yeah.
You know, they had a mosque up here on the north side of 52nd Street. And one of the guys that was guarding their mosque got assassinated once. And at the assassination, they came right down to our mosque and said, we did it. Said, we know that y'all did it. I mean, because we militant and whatnot. We know y'all did it. And it was two brothers going into the mosque, and the police rolled up on them and grabbed them as it was going into the mosque.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, whisk them away. So, we said, what the heck? So when we came to the response, police officers had dogs out there on them and everything, right? So they said, man, we taking them around the corner. And they took them around to the police station, right? So the Imam told me, I was one of the wazirs at the time, he said, listen, go around there, Sayed, and see if you can get some information. I said, okay. So I went around there, and they said, we don't know what you're talking about. We don't know what you're talking about. So I came back and told the Imam, he said, go back, Sayed. So I went back and I said, listen, we got people that love death the way you love life. If you don't give us some information, we're not going to be responsible for what takes place in this community. They called me right upstairs, right then. The guy, what's his name? The guy in charge of, not Homeland Security. What's that called? It's a branch of the government that,
Not the FBI.
not the FBI. Oh, man, what's his name? Finzel was his name. His name was Finzel. Anyway, they gave it up right then. They said, "Oh no, we sorry and all that kind of stuff." You know what I mean? But can we come into the mosque and can we come into the mosque and search for weapons? He said, "You coming down my search for weapons? We ain't got no weapons, but you can come." You know what I mean? So we just got rid of the weapons. That was no problem, So, but I think that back to other highlights. I think that the biggest highlight was the breakup. I think that was the biggest highlight, man.
Yeah. So going back to that, because I'm saying I remember you talked about how, um, you rejected the idea of Saudi coming in
Right,
with them.
right.
So what
Right.
was different? Why did
Well,
what changed?
and that was the striking thing
Yeah.
because what changed was we had some classes in Tasawwuf, Sufism. Imam Yahya had already had
Yeah.
a teacher that was a Sufi, right? You know what I mean? So he didn't tell anybody you got to be a Sufi. But Allah tests you with your stuff. You understand what I mean? So along came this man.
Yeah.
His name was Sheikh Adli. He came along and he wanted to step into not a leadership position, but he wanted to teach the movement, so to speak. You know what I mean? And Imam Yahya said, well, that's fine. You know what I mean? You can be a guest speaker and all that kind of stuff. But he wanted to be in charge. So he opened up another mosque. He opened up another mosque on Atlantic Avenue, I think, in New York, right? You know what I mean? Now we at odds, so to speak. So along comes this man named Mubarak Ali Jilani, sixth Sultan of Fucura, right? He comes along, he goes over to Sheikh Adli, and he tells Sheikh Adli, nah, man, you ain't no real sheikh. I'm a real sheikh. Darul Islam gets wind of this riff. So they go over what is going on over here. Understand? So now they got a little bit of Sufism going with them. So the Sheikh Jilani gets them on his side. So they say, well, I'll tell you what, you got to come and talk to our Imam.
Yeah.
So, story goes that by the time he got to Imam Yahya, when he was talking to Imam Yahya, Yahya's head of security was standing behind Sheikh Jilani,
Mm-hmm.
which gave up an indication. You know what I mean? So Yahya said, all right,
Mm-hmm.
that's the case. I know about it. I'll go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So he said he turned the whole Dar Islam movement over to Sheikh Jilani, and there was no more Dar Islam. We were now a part of the International Jamaat de Fucura.
Yeah.
Okay? And listen, I heard him say it. The reason I know I heard him, I know I heard him say it.
Mm-hmm.
Because what had happened was word trickled down
Yeah.
that Sheikh Jilani was on the set. And everybody was all hyped about this man, Sheikh Jilani. Whoa, 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 whoa. He was so heavy. Yeah, man, you got to keep your wife got to stay covered all the time because he might come into your house. You know what I mean? So your wife got to be covered, man. Oh, man. Sheikh Jilani's a deep dude, man. He come to the United States and go through metal detectors with 245s, and the metal detectors don't even go off. Oh, man, Jan, you know what I mean? Sheikh Jilani was a dude, you know what I mean? Listen, for real, for real, for real, for real. So, Sheikh Jilani, one time, Imam Yahya, he said that there is no more Dar Islam, that I turned the whole movement over to Sheikh Jilani. Now, you said my perspective.
Yeah.
One time, Sheikh Jilani was in Philly. Brother came to me and he said, Sayed, you already a Talib of Sheikh Jilani. You know that, right? So I said, I ain't no Talib of Sheikh Jilani. He said, yeah, you are. You just don't know it. So I said, well, you the FBI. You just don't know it. Now what?
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? You ain't telling me what I'm doing, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I went to the mosque, it's right around the corner. I went to the mosque and I said, listen, invite Sheikh Jilani to my house
Mm-hmm.
for iftar.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He said, okay. So Sheikh Jilani came to my house, to that door, for iftar during Ramadan. With him was 15 other men. I said, wait a minute. I didn't invite y'all, but I know the hadith.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to turn you away.
Yeah.
Come on, mashallah. So I took Sheikh Jilani upstairs to my prayer room, and I sat down with my knees on his knees and my hands on his thighs. And I looked him dead in the face, and I said, Sheikh Jilani, your reputation has preceded you. They tell me you look into hearts. Tell me about me, Sheikh Jilani. He said, you are a good Muslim. You want some dhikr? You come, I give you dhikr in the morning, then the brother Hafiz home. I said, okay, Sheikh. That was the end of the conversation. We came downstairs. At that time, that wasn't there. So at that time, we was praying. My prayer rug was up here. That was a prayer niche, right?
Yeah.
So it came time to make my great prayer, right? One of the brothers that was with him called the Idhan. Now, that by itself was incorrect because my son calls the Idhan in my
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
called the Idhan. And then Sheikh Jilani stepped up on my prayer rug. And I said, wait a minute. He don't think I know that an Imam can be the Imam of another man. All right, so that went off, right? So when he left and all that, I called him out. I said, hey, man, the heck was that about?
Yeah.
So they said, oh, Saeed, you were just being tested. Just being tested by who? Oh, you just don't understand. It did. The sheikh was testing you, but it didn't come from the sheikh. It came from. I said, wait, no, who said that? And he told me the brother that said it. I said, well, listen, you send that brother to my house.
Yeah.
So they sent the brother came around my house, and he came in my house. And he came in my house, in his dicker, yahoo, yahoo, yo. So I said, hey, man. You do not understand Fanner and the Sheikh. So I said, hey, man, and I ain't going to quote what I said to him, but I said something to him very street, very street. And he said, well, the tongue is for praising Allah. I said, well, that's praising Allah. You understand me, you know? And he said, well, you just don't understand, brother. I said, well, listen, I might not understand, but I know what you can do, what you can't do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I got my reservations on this whole thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So I really don't. And then one time when Sheikh Jilani was here, I had an altercation with my wife, one of my wives. Boy, a lot of stuff happened because when he came, a whole lot of negative stuff came. People were beating up their wives and robbing banks and all kinds of stuff. Because he had said, you know, Allah will protect you. You say, I think it was Yahoo. You say Yahoo, you disappear. You disappear. The disbeliever, they cannot even see you. What he was doing was hyping us to go to war for Afghanistan. So he was saying these are things that keep you protected. So brothers was going in banks, stick 'em up, Yahoo, Yahoo, getting arrested. You understand what I mean?
So this was under under his influence that they did this.
Yeah, under his influence.
So
yeah.
before him, none of this was going on.
Oh no, they wasn't. You know, we had sense. We had sense. Matter of fact, the direct was the opposite. When he came along and all that kind of stuff happening, then they started saying, well, actually, before the Sheikh came, the Darul Islam was all criminals. Yeah, okay. You know, we wasn't criminals. Our mind was preset with establishing Islam in Islam. It even got to the point where one brother came to me, my niece, who's now dead, Allah forgive her, she came to me and she said, hey, Uncle Sayed, she said, I ain't supposed to tell you this, but my husband said that your blood is lawful. Yeah. I said, what? He said, yeah. She said, yeah. I said, listen, you tell your husband that I said his is lawful. Right. Now what? Right. You know what I mean? Because what had happened was Sheikh Jilani, we were going to different places, people in different places, Sheikh Jilani, to set up, to go to different land. You had to move outside the cities and all that. So my sister-in-law died in California at the same time that the brothers had gone to California. So when I went to California to my sister's, funeral and stuff, I said, hey, I'm out here. Let me go to the mosque. In fact, it was Ramadan. I said, let me go to the mosque. You know what I mean? So I had my brother take me up to the mosque up in Compton, right? And I knocked on the door. Brother came to the door and said, Assalamu alaikum. What's knocking up? He said, oh, Saeed. He said, you a tolerant of the Sheikh? I said, nah. He said, well, you can't come in here, man. Yeah. And this is only tolerance of the Sheikh can come in here. I said, what? And I'm out in California. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I said, oh, man, this is some shady stuff here.
So what made you, what was it, because a lot of people follow him, what was it in you that said, I'm not following him? Was it that time that he met you in the house?
I just told you all of it.
Was it
the first was he stepped up on my rug. Yeah, yeah. And I said, wait a minute, man. Yeah. He think I don't know that. Then when I was talking to him and he told me come and get a dhikr, I went down to get the dhikr in the morning. He said, what can I do for you, brother? I said, what can you do for me? You told me to come down here. Yeah. Oh, you don't remember me? Yeah. You understand what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah, so,
You notice little things.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Well, number one, by this time, I took Shahada in 67. Mm-hmm. So by this time, I had seen different things come along. I saw a brother come along and say, you live in America. And because you live in America, you do not have to pray 5 times a day. All you have to do is to make all your prayers before you go to bed at night. Allah knows you must work. I heard brothers say stuff like, do you know in America, you can eat a pig if it's killed by a Jew. You know what I'm saying? I've heard that kind of stuff, man, for real, for real.
And these are
you know what I mean?
Immigrants.
And these immigrant people, you know what I mean? One guy was from Jordan, you know what I mean? He talked crazy stuff. One guy even told my wife, and it was my wife and another brother's wife, told him this way, I tell you, you come, I teach you Arabic. Just you two. I told my wife, you better not go to that square. What's he talking about? He didn't say a class for the sisters.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
He said, just you two, just you two.
Right.
You know, so I said, baby, you better not go there. You know what I mean? You know, shoot. I did the same thing with my wife, and Allah forgive me, and I love her dearly. But when Sheikh Jilani was around, he called all the sisters to him, and he was gonna have all the sisters take bayat to him by kissing his ring. You know what I mean? Kissing his ring. I said, baby, you go out that door right there. When you come back, I ain't gonna be here. I'm later for that. She said, I ain't going. I ain't going. You know what I mean? My son, he became a toddler of Sheikh Jilani. And we wasn't arguing. We was talking one day real hot and heavy. He said, Abu said, I said, Abu. Abu, heck is Abu. He said, but that's what we call Sheikh Jilani. I said, you call that Jilani Abu? And I don't raise you and you 20-some years old and you calling this other person Abu? Tell you what, get your bags and go to your father's house. You know what I mean? Yeah. Tell you what, you get your bags and go to Abu's house. You know what I mean? Because obviously I ain't Abu. You understand what I mean? But you know, it was just it was a trying time where the brothers didn't want to speak to you. You know what I mean? One brother even told me, he said, you know what, Sayed? He said, man, if Sheikh Jilani ain't your sheikh, man, then Shaitan your sheikh. You know what I mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, do not divide yourself up into sects with each party rejoicing in that which is among itself. Right. You know what I mean? You know? So another thing about Dar Islam was we didn't want to be like that. That's why everybody had the same thing in the movement. Everybody had the same thing. We had to wear the same kind of clothes to go to class. You know, mashallah. You know, things that we felt would solidify us as a group. You know what I mean? And yeah, I meant to tell you this too. One of the things about Dar Islam was the fact that, and Sheikh Jilani, was the fact that because Yahya had this other sheikh, when Sheikh Jilani came along, the surprise was, how are you turning this thing over to Sheikh Jilani when our whole thing has been no outside influence for us? Yeah. But then it dawned, Yahya was a Sufi. You know what I mean? And you know, he didn't tell everybody y'all got to be Sufis. He didn't do that. You understand me? But what he did do, he planted enough in people. And I found this. I found that the people in Dar es Salaam that actually followed Sheikh Jilani were people that came to Dar es Salaam maybe 2 years before. You know what I mean? Before he came. You know, and they came into Islam through Dar es Salaam via the death of Elijah Muhammad. You know what I mean? Elijah Muhammad dead. Now we can go to real Islam. You understand what I mean? So they took Shahada, Dar es Salaam. You know what I mean? But coming out of Allah appeared in the person and coming out of, you know, the Savior, you understand what I mean? It was easy for a Savior, you know what I mean? So, you know, I found that most of the people that got down because they were just coming into Dar Islam, not the ones that started in Dar Islam. People like myself and a few other brothers that have been around for years in the movement, you know.
What happened to the people who split off? Did everybody split off under one, or did it go into many splinters?
It didn't go into many splitters, but the main body became the national community of Imam Jamil. The main body,
Okay.
most, became a part of the national community of Imam Jamil. Those who wanted to stay with the concept of establishing Islam in this land, which is what his Dar Islam was, to aid in establishing Islam in the land. You ain't got this, but our aim to put action into the Muslims in more ways than one, physically, mentally, and most of all spiritually, to bring faith into the hearts of the Muslim to bring faith into the hearts of the Munafiqun, and to establish in the land of the Kafirun or the disbeliever the words of Allah and the example of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Darul Islam movement, So that's where we were coming from, But I think that, like I said, I think that the people that really got down with him were the ones that just came into the movement in recent years after the death of Elijah, 77, 78, like that. But the bulk
Yeah.
became what became known as the National Community of Imam Jamil.
Okay.
That's where the bulk is now. And the National Community of Imam Jamil has become they tried to break that up with the rest of Imam Jamil, but it's still functioning.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. And those, a lot of the sons of the people I'm friends with. So, all right. So, one of the things that that I noticed almost in every history that I studied of our people is that if we allowed the immigrant influence to come in, they broke up us from our families, even our non-Muslim families, and made us feel like they were not to be, not to even be, we couldn't even go to this, relate to them and that type of thing. Did you experience that?
Well, not so much.
Okay.
Not so much because, well, a couple of incidents, but one incident, I'd made a lot with a brother. This brother may have been Jordanian. I'm not certain. In fact, I was standing next to him in the slot rank on a Juma. So after Juma, I went to the supermarket and he was standing in front of me. So I said, Assalamu alaikum. He did like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not like, you know what I mean, but like this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what you talking about? What you talking about? And I just made a lot with him, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But there were incidents like that, you know what I mean? One of the things, like I said, one of the things that they said in mass was that Dar Islam was not educated. So what they wanted to do was, one of the things was, come under the umbrella of our sheikhs, let our sheikhs teach you, you know what I mean, and become a part of the organization that we in charge of, But alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did what he did to who he did it to. So it wasn't like fractions. It was just that those who went to Sheikh Jilani went to Sheikh Jilani. And those who didn't go to Sheikh Jilani, for the most part, stayed true to the concept of Dar Islam. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Now the stragglers in between,
Yeah.
they went whatever they went. You understand me?
Okay. So what about you and your brother? So did your brother and you kind of be on the same page? Did y'all ever?
Oh yeah, we was on the same
Y'all
page the
on
whole
the same
time.
page. So what happened? Like so as this split happened, it seems like you kind of are a little bit more independent than just from what I hear. Where would you put yourself?
I was just going to Jamil Al-Amin,
Yeah.
because of the fact that I was a founding father
Mm-hmm.
of Dar Islam in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
When it broke up, it was myself and some of the other brothers that decided to stay Dar Islam. And Imam Jamil became the head of
Yeah.
Dar Islam. So I've always been Dar Islam because I took Shahada that way,
Yeah.
and that's where I came in. In fact, I say a lot of times, zebras
Mm-hmm.
don't change stripes. They might get larger
Yeah.
or they might get bigger,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't all of a sudden become polka dots.
Yeah.
That was my thing to the stance of the Nation of Islam.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Elijah died,
Yeah.
and Louis Farrakhan and what you call him said, well, you know what? We'll be the Bilalians.
Right.
No,
Right.
we'll be the we'll be the World Community of Islam in the West.
Right.
No, we'll be the American Muslim Mission. No, we'll be the whatever it was
Yeah.
that they decided they want to kind of change. You understand me?
Yeah.
You don't change stripes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're actually on the same page. You know what I mean? Page might be in Technicolor or something like that. But my brother and I,
Yeah.
number one, he literally was my oldest blood brother. So I definitely loved my brother.
Yeah.
And outside of, like I said, I was 9 when I first got my inclination of him being a Muslim. You know what I mean? Because he's 10 years older than me. But like I said, when he was like 13 to 14, I'm like 4, 5. I remember him doing things like the tower and painting stuff and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, I trusted my brother for real, for real. And he too was on the same vibe as far as Shakedown was concerned. He said, "What?" You know what I mean? I went up to see him one time about it. He said, "Saeed," he said, I don't know how Imam Yahya let that happen, because part of it, because he's part of the founding fathers, part of it was, do not let the brothers, especially Pakistanis, do not let them run us.
To wrap up, because you pretty much ended it. Okay, now everybody's with the community of Imam Jamil, but they don't call themselves a Dar anymore, right?
No, no, no. What had happened was like I said, Imam Yahya Abdul Kareem. He said that he turned the whole movement over to Sheikh Jilani. There was no more Dar Islam. We, meaning those who were Dar Islam, are now under the national community of Jamaat to Fucura. About a few years later, I have it in there. They wrote a book that said that there was no Islam in America until Sheikh Jilani came. There was no Islam in America until Sheikh Jilani came. So one day we were at a festival down here in Pennsylvania and here in Philadelphia, and the brother from their Jamaat, from Jamaat to Fuqara, I knew them because from Dar es Salaam. I knew them. So one of the brothers came up to me and asked me to buy this book. So I said that I didn't have any money. So the brother said, "Oh, you can't support us." He went in that kind of bad, because it's all negative vibes, you know what I mean? But the brother that I was talking to, I knew him well from Dar es Salaam. He's from Dar es Salaam. In fact, he was the head of security from Dar es Salaam. He was the one that introduced Sheikh Jilani to Imam Yahya. So he said to me, he said, "Listen," he said to the brother, he said, "First of all, give the book to Saeed. Give it to him. He ain't got to pay for it." So he gave me the book. And then he told me, he said, "Listen, Saeed, they say in this book," I got the book right in there. He said, "They say in this book that there was no Islam in America until Sheikh Jilani got here. You and I both know that's a big, bold, false lie. So what I want you to do, Saeed, I want you to write a chapter about Dar es Salaam. And if they ever publish anything else about Islam in America, I got to put that chapter inside the book." So I said, "Okay, that's this here." And it's called "A Short Overview of Islam in Philadelphia, the Last 50 Years with Emphasis on the Dar Islam Movement." I wrote this in the year 2000. You know what I mean? So that's where that's at with them and those who followed into Imam Jamil. You know, they still are. Oh, they changed their name. They're now called Muslims of the America. Muslims of the Americas is what they're called now. But Sheikh Jilani is still around. He's still giving teaching. A lot of the people that were in that movement have come out of it, especially those that were in Dar es Salaam in the early years. Now that they're in their 70s and 60s, it's like, hey, you understand me? So, mashallah. I have a son. I have two sons that's part of that. One of them is incarcerated. I have a daughter who was married at one point to a Salafi. So we went to see my son one day, and I was looking at them talk to one another. And then I was just smiling. They said, "What you smiling at, Abby?" I said, "I'm smiling because you're brother and sister. But if it wasn't for the fact that I raised you as Muslims, you would have no conversation like this. Because a Salafi ain't definitely dealing with no Sufi, and a Sufi ain't dealing with no Salafi. But y'all know that I raised y'all right. You know what I mean? You know I raised you with the book and the Sunnah. You know what I mean? And the law says blood is thicker in the estimation of the law then there's the tie of believers,
That's true. That's
So,
true.
alhamdulillah. So this talks
Important.
specifically about Philly, but it does mention the fact that Dar Islam came to Philly
Mm-hmm.
in 1968 or 69, I think, when they came to Philly.
Mm-hmm.
It does mention that, and it does mention um, uh, the other organizations that were around Philadelphia
Mm-hmm.
between 1940 and 2000. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
I'm gonna give that to you,
Okay.
and
Thank you.
you can have that. And
Okay.
um,
I'm gonna take some pictures of the book with pictures. This one.
you want to take some pictures of that?
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure,
Let's see.
sure.
This. Other thing I wanted to ask is also some of the you had. When we talked on the phone, you said there's some people you think I should talk to regarding the Dar here. Um, so you have any recommendations for who I should
Um,
talk to that you are connected to that would be helpful?
I don't know how to get in touch with him,
Okay.
but there's a brother that's doing. Matter of fact, brother told me the other day that they was working on a piece that he wanted to talk to me,
Mhm.
get my input.
Mhm.
Young brother named Bilal. He's putting together a work
Okay.
on the Dar Islam movement,
Okay.
and um,
Brother named Bilal.
the people that
I know my
did
brother Akil is always working on something. I always talk to him, but okay.
Akil Abdul Sabor.
Akil Fahad.
Oh, Akil Fahad. Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um. But yeah, anybody who you even just the name. I just need the name. I'll figure out whether I can connect to them or not.
But I'm the man for Dar Islam in Philadelphia on the real,
I got you.
because
So and
like I
also,
said, I took Shahada.
yeah.
I took Shahada at Dar Islam, and I was on the founding fathers of the Dar Islam movement in Philadelphia for
So
all three mosques. We
actually,
founded three mosques.
about say that what you said again about the founding father, and also tell me some of the programs that you worked on, some of the things that you did or initiated. Anything that you feel
Oh,
like you can share.
okay. Well, we started off, like I said, we started off in 1969 with a building up on Oregon Avenue and named it Mosque. It was called Mosque. It was called Mujahideen Mosque. That's what it was called, Mujahideen Mosque. And we stayed up there till 1970. We went down to 1914 Columbia Avenue, and it was there that the Imam came to me and said, because of the fact that I used to be a preacher, quote unquote, he came to me and said, "Listen, man, I want you to be in charge of Tabligh." So I became the Wazir of Tabligh there at 1914 Columbia Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed that until today. The Wazir of Tabligh,
Okay.
Minister of Propagation, that's my position in the mosque that I'm at right now,
Okay. Okay.
And when Mujahideen Mosque said they were no longer Dar Islam, 13 of us left and came out here to West Philly and started another mosque called Masjid Ashahud Dar Islam, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then we stayed that way until that's where we were when Sheikh Jilani came along. Dar Islam broke up. The name Dar Islam, they said there was no more Dar Islam. So the very next morning, I went around to the masjid and I said, "Listen, everything in this building that got the name Masjid Mujahideen and got on Dar Islam on it, I'm taking it. I got it. Everything that got Dar Islam on it,
Mm-hmm.
since it ain't no more Dar Islam,
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking it."
Mm-hmm.
That included the fact that we had Shura. That includes the fact that we had Rod. That includes the fact that we had a Savings and Loan Association. That includes the fact that we had a school building. I mean, school papers. You know what I mean? I'm taking it all. Anything that say Dar Islam, I'm taking it. What you got to say about it? Y'all don't want it. It ain't Dar Islam.
Right.
So I'm taking it. You know
Right.
what I mean? And then we went up to where we at now, 60th Street, and up here, 60th Street, it was no longer Dar Islam. By this time, it had become the national community of Imam Jamil. You know what I mean? And the name was, instead of being Mujahideen Mosque, we changed it to Masjid Mujahideen.
Okay.
You know, matter of fact, we had to call the Imam of Mujahideen Mosque to get his permission, basically. You know, hey man, we want to call our mosque Masjid Mujahideen after the first one of Dar Islam in 1969. You know, so that's where we at right now, Masjid
Who's the imam
Mujahideen.
there now?
Yeah,
And who's the imam there
now is the Imam there now is Hajj Amir. Yeah, Hajj Amir. Hajj Amir Imam. I got to say it like that. Hajj Amir Imam Asim Abdul Rashid. Because he is standing instead of Imam Jamil at the moment, because, you know, the national Jamaat. And he's also the Imam of Masjid Mujahideen at the mosque. You know what I mean? So,
now? Okay.
yeah.
And when did he come to be imam?
Asim Abdul Rashid,
Mm-hmm.
he became Imam in 1980, must have been 82.
Okay.
I think it was 1982.
Okay.
I became the Imam in I became the Imam in 81,
Mm-hmm.
and he became the Imam right behind me. My stint as Imam wasn't very long. You know, the brothers were, quite frankly, they were dissatisfied with the move that I made. You know what I mean? But to prove my adherence to what I had said about my pledge and my bayat, the paper that I had signed, I tore it up right in front of them. I said, "Tell you what, I ain't down with it. I'm down with y'all. Whatever y'all say is what I'm down with."
Yeah.
So I tore it up, and they elected somebody else as imam.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I'm down with Dar Islam.
Yeah.
I tell somebody that right now. If you look behind that cup up there, if you stand up and look behind that cup,
Mm-hmm.
can you see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You,
Yeah. I can see it.
you see that?
Mm-hmm.
You see that?
I see it.
Yeah.
I see it.
That was on the back of all our cars. Dar Islam. That was the flag. The flag was black and white. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Dar Islam.